G'day everybody, I'm known as the Accumulator of Information, and you can call me the Accumulator. I'm a government operative that investigates supernatural hotspots, global aerospace infrastructures, and locations where conspiracies take place.
And you can call me the Astronaut. I am the Accumulator's assistant. We met when he interviewed me, disguised as a newspaper journalist. I've participated in prominent space explorations over the past 15 years at least. Many of these you will have never heard of due to their covert nature.
Welcome to episode 2 of our podcast, Starlight Network. One night as a very little boy, I looked at my window beside my bed, seeing something I've never seen before. A big bright light speeding through the sky like a weird satellite going out of complete control. The time I thought what I really saw was a meteor crash into Earth. Turns out that the big bright light, as a matter of fact, a shiny glimmer ray. Starlight, not that I imagined a starlight shooting through the sky, a starlight. After my experience, I intend to tell that story to you. Starlight Network. The following program is classified as adults only. Contents and subjects contain statistical information regarding supernatural events that is scary for children and certain individual young adults. In Starlight Network, we are going to be talking about supernatural disturbances during space exploration missions, UFO sightings, haunted houses, unexplained disappearances, ghost encounters, poltergeists, conspiracy theories in history, and espionage. It is our duty to investigate and substantiate the truth hiding in plain sight of each subject, which we tend to report individually and collectively.
In this episode of Starlight Network, we are covering the incredible Westall High School UFO sighting. We will examine the individual perspectives of the staff and students who were there on the day and expose the shocking cover-up that occurred afterwards. So stay tuned, get comfortable, and get ready to expand your mind.
On the morning of Wednesday, April 6, 1966, a high school student by the name of Graham Simmons was precipitating with numerous chemicals to make crystals during chemistry class at Westall High School in Clayton, southeast Victoria. Holding a bottle of chemicals and trying to think of a way to fudge his science report, Graham Simmons looked out the classroom window. He was shocked to see what appeared to look like a silver disc hovering 80 meters high in the sky, far from the classroom window. He then saw dozens of students running around on the oval like zebras being chased by lions.
Dozens more students ran out to the oval to see what was happening. As it turns out, what was happening was one of the strangest and highly witnessed UFO sightings in history.
On this day, April 6, 1966, over 200 students and staff witnessed this supernatural event. A young female student came bursting into the classroom of science teacher Andrew Greenwood, yelling, "Mr. Greenwood, there's a flying saucer!"
Andrew Greenwood, along with 200 other students, including his entire classroom, ran to the oval and described a grey, almost cylindrical cigar-shaped object hovering high up in the sky.
Based on the many different accounts, it's almost certain that there was more than one craft. Students gave various descriptions of a spacecraft flying around, popping out of the ground like a children's pop-up book, ascending and descending multiple times, up and down, and accelerating rapidly in circulations around the oval. According to student Victor Sukrusny, there were 2 additional silver discs stationary on the ground and only 3 meters apart. Victor Sukrusny and some other students heard a staff member telling them not to climb over the fence to get closer to the craft, but they did anyway. After climbing the fence, Victor Zakruzny went to examine a different craft to the other students and was able to touch it and described feeling a heat emanating from it. He did sketches of the craft and recalled that they were 1.5 meters in length and 5.4 meters in width, making them long cylindrical discs.
Student Terry Peck described a similar experience to Victor Zakruzny, recalling, "I could feel a heat and hear this buzzing sound, and I could see purple lights all around it." Terry was playing sport on the oval when she saw the craft flying into the sky. She and other students followed the craft into the Grange Reserve, a pine plantation area behind the school that was normally out of bounds to students. After descending and briefly disappearing from view into the pine trees, the craft appeared again from behind the trees and ascended rapidly, disappearing into the sky.
Terry Peck described the eerie details of what was left behind when the saucers departed. She said in the area where the craft had landed, the grass was flattened, yellow, almost burned into a swirly pattern. The kind of thing you see when a parked vehicle has been sitting on a patch of grass for weeks or months. But in this case, it had been only seconds.
Time for an ad break. Don't go anywhere. More mystery and intrigue in the Westall case coming up after these short messages. Welcome back to our coverage of the Westall UFO incident. So, the UFOs had been witnessed in broad daylight and confusion was everywhere. Within 40 minutes, the area was already swarming with military officials. Teacher Andrew Greenwood was told by the officials that the Education Board would eradicate his reputation as a teacher and he'd be reported to law enforcement if he ever spoke about it publicly. The students were also told not to speak about the event to the press under any circumstances. Two of the students, Joy Clark and Marilyn Smith, hesitantly broke this rule by speaking to the local Dandelion Journal newspaper and were given detention for 2 days as a result. Channel 9 News also arrived at the school to get the scoop on the event. An intriguing detail is that the film reel from this broadcast has since mysteriously vanished.
Another teacher at Westall, Barbara Robbins, went outside to take photos of the craft. This important evidence, authenticating that there was a UFO, was taken away by two men. One in a suit and another in uniform on the same day. These two mysterious officials were out the front of the school and demanded Barbara to hand over the entire camera with the film inside. They claimed to be Victorian police officers, but didn't have any signs of rank or badges. It's speculated that the images Barbara Robbins took, as well as the missing Channel 9 newsreel, are being held classified and may one day be discovered in future times to come.
One of the most disturbing aspects of this event that we should discuss is the story of Tanya, a friend of student Jacqueline Argent. Jacqueline details how she, Tanya, and two other students also climbed the fence to chase after the craft. Tanya was in the lead and for a moment they lost sight of her. When Jacqueline caught up, Tanya and the other girls had strangely passed out. She then saw the saucer flying off and disappearing into thin air. It's believed that Tanya got quite close to the craft on the ground and may have touched it. On returning to school, Tanya remained non-responsive, so an ambulance was called. Tanya was taken away, and nobody at the school ever saw or heard from her again. To this day, we still don't know if she's alive or dead. Accumulator, this is deeply troubling. What do you think could have happened to her?
It's not even known if Tanya was taken to a hospital. So what if she was taken to a military base to be inspected for radiation substances in her system that may have caused a possible death? What if touching the spacecraft caused an electromagnetic pulse that had spontaneously shut her system down, causing her to pass out? What if she was held somewhere against her will in order to be kept from the public eye? The details of Tanya's history are completely tentative, but it's also disturbing to think that she may have just been institutionalized as a result of what she saw. Her experience with the alien spacecraft could have erased her memory. It's possible that her cognitive state could have been permanently affected.
That's so scary and horrible to think about, but it's a very real possibility. The truth is, in this case, there is very little physical evidence. People have gone searching at the Westall landing site and found nothing. However, what we do have is the collective first-hand accounts of over 200 people who witnessed something spectacular and inexplicable on that day in 1966. It's hard to think that 200 individuals could have all hallucinated the same thing at the same time.
Yes, and adding extra credibility is the fact it wasn't only the school students and the staff that witnessed the event. Air traffic controller Lawrence Cummings reported that a pilot also witnessed the craft from the air, which were travelling at a speed of 965 kilometres per hour and a height of 1.2 kilometres. There was another witness nearer to the site itself. A market gardener named Paul Smith said he was pulling out some plants in the grange when he and a few other gardeners saw the students climbing over the fence. Later on, he saw patterns of tightly concentric circles scattered about on the grass, thought to be left by the craft. Paul Smith witnessed army trucks and jeeps approaching the scene, and soldiers wearing khaki suits were inspecting the circles. These personnel were thought to be from the Broadmeadows and Puckapunyal army bases. However, the uniforms of these mysterious soldiers did not match up with regulation Australian uniforms at the time. They were thought to be American military who were stationed in Australia due to the Vietnam War effort. Another witness, automatic mechanic Les Maju, who was in the area at the time, witnessed the soldiers violently kicking the ground where the circles were as though they were scouring for more evidence and scanning with metal mine detectors and Geiger counters.
There have been theories put forth that the craft were actually some type of weather balloon being used by the Meteorological Office. This type of thinking doesn't come close to explaining the way the craft were described, as well as their strange, rapid and erratic movements as seen by the witnesses. It also doesn't explain why the government took such forceful measures to keep the events secret.
The military and intelligence personnel who attended the site weren't behaving as though this was a commonplace weather balloon or aircraft. Something was definitely unusual about this event, and to this day it remains unexplained. All we have are the statements of the many witnesses that day who continued to grapple with what they saw.
This is an incredible story, Accumulator. Tell us why you chose this one for us to speak about on the podcast today.
Well, what I consider idealistic about this story is that all those witnesses were so determined to tell their story, but the fear and adrenaline of being told to keep the secret stopped them from revealing details for such a long time. Most didn't reveal details until 44 years later, when a documentary came out in 2010 called Westall 66, a suburban UFO mystery. I'd like to personally acknowledge the witnesses whose statements we have spoken about today. Thank you for your courage in exposing this strange and incredible occurrence.
Thanks so much, Accumulator. And thanks everyone for listening to these fascinating stories. But beware, the truth can be a dangerous thing. Tune in next week for another exciting episode of
Starlight Network. One night as a very little boy, I looked at my window beside my bed, seeing something I've never seen before. A big bright light speeding through the sky like a weird satellite going out of complete control. The time I thought what I really saw was a meteor crashing to Earth. Turns out that the big bright light, as a matter of fact, a shiny glimmer ray. Starlight, not that I imagine a starlight shooting through the sky, a starlight. After my experience, I intend to tell that story to you. Starlight Network.